This is a close-up from the comic book Arkham Asylum, a serious house on serious Earth, and it might be the most unsettling Batman. The face is turned in profile and half swallowed by the blue around it, close enough to human to read as a face, and far enough off to feel wrong. What makes this particular depiction so disturbing, and does it have something to do with the Uncanny Valley? In this video, we will explore exactly that. For most of Batman's history, the habit has been to draw him as the most solid, recognizable figure on the page. In 1989, an English artist broke that habit. His name is Dave McKean, and he works in painting, photography, and sculpting rather than standard comic line art. By the late 80s, he was already known to comic readers for his covers on Neil Gaiman's Sandman, which is probably where most people first registered the name. The thing to understand about the visual horror of Arkham Asylum, before it makes any sense, is how far McKean's style swings. One reviewer at the time, Roger Sabin, writing in New Statesman and Society, said his work switched from gloomy photorealism to bright abstraction, meaning McKean can paint a face so detailed it looks like a photograph, then on the next page let a figure dissolve into blur and smudge. That swing is the tool, and across the comic book he handed the two extremes to different characters on purpose. And the reason the Batman in here looks so disturbing is that McKean has been openly blunt about the character. In McKean's own words, he doesn't believe in a man dressed up as a bat wandering around hitting people. The book even started as an ordinary man in a batsuit comic, and he and the writer Grant Morrison pulled it somewhere else. What McKean did think worked was the other side of the character, the dark, blurred, bleak shadow you only catch in glimpses. He called that an image of a man caught between the two, and that was the version he wanted. So he refused to give Batman a defined mask or a clean costume. The little gold chest badge, in his own words, just went. He found it ludicrous. What he kept was the strange, mystical side, something closer to a part human, part animal creature, out of old myth than a man in a suit. He nearly went further than that. McKean has said he originally wanted to stage the whole book like a theatrical production, with every character wearing a mask, the Joker reduced to a single suspended mask floating in the air, Two-Face given two. It pulled back from that in the end, but the instinct tells you everything about the approach. The materials used to construct the art also backs this up. Morrison handed McKean small thumbnail layouts so the panels would still work as a sequence, and McKean threw out everything else about how a comic normally gets drawn. Instead of clean ink lines, he built these pages out of acrylic, watercolor inks, pencil, graphite, whatever was closest, with collage worked in for texture. He said he likes things that happen by accident. He'd build up texture and paste, glue scraps of material down, paint over them in 2 or 3 swipes, and then leave the textures to work themselves out. The results reads less like a comic and more like something assembled out of a bad dream. The technique is the whole reason the horror lands, so hold on to it. It isn't only the way McKean drew Batman that unsettles. The story built around the art is asking the same thing the art is, and the question is this: what separates Batman from the people locked inside the asylum when he built himself out of the same grief and obsession they did? Here's the story it tells. The inmates of Arkham Asylum seize the building and take the staff hostage. They are led by the Joker, who kills a guard to make sure Batman takes the threat seriously. Their demand comes through Commissioner Gordon. They will let the hostages go, but only if Batman comes inside and becomes one of them. Batman agrees, and the moment he steps in, the Joker turns it into a game, giving him 1 hour to find his way out through the asylum before the other inmates are sent to hunt him. As he moves deeper into the building, he meets the worst of his rogue gallery, and each one is staged as a different kind of damage. He finds Two-Face on the floor under a table, having wet himself because the asylum's therapist took away his coin, gave him a 6-sided die, then a tarot deck, and the man now cannot make any decisions without consulting the cards, including whether to use the bathroom. Running underneath all of it is the story of Armedius Arkham, the man who founded the place, told in flashback and journal pages. Arkham became a psychiatrist because of his mother's mental illness, and the flashbacks revealed that she suffered delusions of a supernatural bat tormenting her, that he eventually saw the creature too, and that he cut her throat to end her suffering and then buried the memory. Years later, an inmate named Martin Hawkins raped and murdered Arkham's wife and daughter, and Arkham treated the man in his own asylum and killed him with an overdose of electroshock, disguised as an accident, before sinking into madness and becoming a patient in the house he built. The riot itself turns out to have been engineered by the asylum's administrator, Cavendish, who Batman finds holding a razor to the therapist's throat, convinced the house wanted Batman brought back to it. The fight ends when the therapist takes the razor and cuts Cavendish's throat. Batman then hacks the front door open with an axe and tells the inmates they're free to go, but none of them are leaving. They took the asylum, they were never trying to escape it. He hands Two-Face back the coin the therapist had confiscated and says the decision about whether Batman lives should be his. Two-Face calls it scarred side up. The inmates kill him. Clean side, he walks. He flips, looks at it and tells them Batman is free. Batman leaves. The inmates go back to their cells on their own, and the Joker sees him off with a line about how there will always be a place for him in Arkham if the outside world ever gets to be too much. Then Two-Face looks at the coin again. It came up scarred. The kill side. He lied. The one man in the building who supposedly can't make a decision made one and let Batman go. That's the whole plot. What adds to the horror sits underneath it in the way the pages painted, and that's almost entirely McKean's doing. It starts with the color, because most of Arkham Asylum sits in a narrow band of cold blue and black, and red turns up so rarely. The Joker's lettering is smeared blood, that when it appears, it reads as a wound on the page. The blue holds everything at the same low temperature, which is part of why Batman, the figure who's supposed to anchor the page, never quite settles into it. Then there's the detail, which McKean doesn't spend evenly. Batman gets the least finish of anyone in the book, often just a black shape with no clean edges. That's deliberate, and it's the thing he said worked about the character. The blur you only half see. The villains get the reverse, so the Joker comes painted close to photographic. Every tooth and the red worked into the skin around his eyes, and the other villains' faces get that same care. So the hero is the blur, and the madmen are the things rendered in full. My reading is that this is the argument of the whole comic book made visual, that Batman is the one who doesn't hold together in here, but you can judge that from the pages yourself. Which brings the opening question back around. That profile is the one where both halves of McKean's style meet, the detail and the blur in the same face, and it's worth saying exactly what's wrong with it, because it isn't only the paint. The proportions are off, the jaw juts forward and down too far, the nose is sharp and hooked instead of the squared, heroic profile Batman usually gets, and the neck below the cowl is thick and corded, running straight into the jaw, so there's no clean line where the head ends. The closest thing it resembles is a vampire, the Nosferatu silhouette perhaps. In 1970, the roboticist Masahiro Mori proposed what he called the Uncanny Valley. As something gets closer to looking human, our response to it warms, until it gets close enough that the small wrongness take over and drops it into unease instead. Mori was talking about robots and prosthetics, not paint, so I'm borrowing the idea, but this face sits in the dip he described. It gives you a human profile and then loads it with proportions a human profile doesn't have, and the paint won't quite resolve it either way. And that's the thing I kept coming back to. McKean has said as much. If there's an image in here that doesn't make sense, fine, maybe it resonates with someone and they find a personal meaning in it, or maybe it just sits there as one of the book's imponderables. The asylum, in his words, was the perfect coat hanger to hang all that madness on. And it worked. Arkham Asylum was a commercial and critical hit on release, and it still turns up near the top of best Batman story lists more than 30 years on. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.